So I guess for me, the Power of Place sort of started when I was a kid on Sligo Creek in Maryland. That was really the place that I really remember powerfully and vividly. And then a year later, moving to Colorado and climbing with my dad. Those kind of experiences really shaped who I became and the educational journey that I went on. But this book really started at Teton Science School. I joined their advisory board about 4 years ago, and as Mike knows, it's just a magical place with a group of super thoughtful people. So a lot of the insights that I'm going to share today are really gleaned through my collaboration with Teton Science School, and Emily and I wrote Power of Place with Nate McLennan, the VP of Innovation at Teton Science School. It's interesting to note that we finished the book 390 days ago. I looked it up the other day. And as these things work out, you finish a book and then it comes out a year later, and it came out that same week that the WHO called COVID a global pandemic. And so you never really know where your book is going to land, but this one sort of landed in the middle of a pandemic, which immediately turned all of our homes and communities into classrooms. And so suddenly, for what may have been a foreign idea, this idea of community as classroom sort of came to pass instantly and worldwide. And so while it's a sort of a weird time to introduce the book, it's also something that we're all experiencing together. What I most love about the Teton Science School approach is the way they think about place in this sort of triangular way of not just entering it as a geography, as an ecology, but also thinking multi-dimensionally about the people that live there, the culture and history that they share, and the economy, the way people are sustaining themselves, and the way that the economy interacts with the ecology. So I appreciate this sort of multi-dimensional notion of place. I want to start today by making this super tangible. Well, when I talk about place, I often think about my last visit to Newview in Cambridge. This is a little micro school that sits right on Mass Ave, right between MIT and Harvard. And the last day that I went there, I visited these two studios. And the studio on the left was a sociology and economics studio, and they took a walking tour of Cambridge, and they geocoded a set of observations about demographics and economics. Who lives there? Who owns property here? Who owns the businesses here? And what inferences can we draw about place from the standpoint of economics and demographics and the social justice of the real estate in Cambridge? And then I walked across the hall to this other biology class, and they had done a similar walking tour of Cambridge, but they charted the smell, the type, duration, and intensity of the smell. So down in the very lower right, you can see smell notes, where they were charting them and making observations about them. And then they came back and the teacher challenged them to create a visual, a data visualization of their observations. So some, like this young lady, created a chart. Others actually created art, three-dimensional art, to visualize how they had experienced the smell of that community. So a very cool example of integrating biology and geo mapping with the arts. So on a third day, you can also imagine the same group of students taking an art and architecture tour and charting the way they visually experience the place, and then thinking about, in this sort of sedimentary way, who lived here before us, and what art and architecture, what artifacts did they leave in this place. And so Newview is this great example of of using immersive experiences to really understand where you're from. As Mike knows, Teton Science School uses these really cool 6 design principles, and I want to give you about 30 seconds of each of these principles. As we do, I would love to have you think about your own sort of design principles and how you approach your practice as a teacher or a leader or a designer, and the way in which your principles shape your practice. Think about how sometimes your principles are in tension with each other and how they invite us to think about, paradoxically, about holding opposites in mind simultaneously. But I love the holistic structure that these design principles leave with me. First is local to global. We experience place very locally and very personally, and so if a young person wonders about water, the best thing to do is go outside and find a stream or a ditch and begin taking some measurements, making some observations about that water. You can quickly then connect that to the global water crisis and how that's going to shape the life and the economics of the Middle East for generations to come. The cool thing is that kids may hear about the water crisis in the Middle East, and a teacher can connect it with a ditch out behind the school that leads into their local watershed. So place has this wonderful way of this extensibility of going local to global and global to local. As I said, everyone experiences place in a very different way. So I think it's innately, inherently learner-centered. It invites us to understand people sort of rooted in context. When I think about place, I think about Wes Matthews here. He's a senior at Science Leadership Academy in Philadelphia. He was named the Poet Laureate for Philadelphia in 2017. He has this beautiful, rich sense of being from Philadelphia and what that means in a historical, dynamic context. And the thing I love about SLA is that it really embraces Wes as a learner, as a leader in his place. Place is inherently inquiry-based. It invites us to ask questions. It's one thing I love about this Maker Academy in Brooklyn, where they invite learners to make things that are relevant to them and their community. Place is interdisciplinary. We organize our schools around disciplines, but place is inherently interdisciplinary. It invites us to think richly and multidimensionally. I love that across the New Tech Network, they organize their units of study around driving questions. This is a young lady from Catherine Smith Elementary School in San Jose. You can see that these second graders are looking at a question called, how might we provide a desirable product to consumers? That launched a really interesting set of questions about both products and consumers in the place that they share in this East San Jose neighborhood. Place invites us to think about the community as classroom. I think for the last 30 years in standards-based reform, we've become pretty sterile and focused on standards and testing. What I love about what's happening now, sort of inadvertently, is that we're rediscovering community as classroom. I think place-based learning really invites us to think about all the assets available to young people and to families. I'm excited about a future that makes transportation more ubiquitous, cleaner, more affordable, and that really unlocks the power of place and invites us to think much more expansively about where and how we learn, with big implications for education facilities. Sorry, my office dog, sorry. So I want to close just by giving you an example from Crosstown High. Crosstown is this really cool urban village. It's a renovated Sears distribution center, and it includes a school, it includes theaters, it has 260 apartments, it has businesses and theaters. So it's its own learning ecosystem in this wonderful way. Students can learn in this place, but also in this neighborhood. So I love the fact that place exists here in multiple dimensions. I also love the fact that they really embrace their community. This Project 901 was a mashup of English and social studies that started with a set of bus tours to Memphis neighborhoods. They invited every student to take this driving question of what challenges exist and how might we design solutions to those. And every student built an answer to that turned into a research project that turned into a paper. And what you see here is a teacher coaching a student on their paper. So a great example of community as classroom, designing a project that brought learner voice and choice into it, but that was packed with content standards from social studies and English. So a really rich, community-grounded learning experience. I'll close with a couple tips on how might we engage in place, especially during this really strange time. The first is inviting learners to start a journal, and that could be as simple as look outside or go outside and write about what you see today. So place-based can be as simple as attending to the world around you and trying to draw inference and observation from it. And maybe there's an opportunity to finish out this year with a community-connected project of some sort. As those of you that are educators and think about next year, maybe there's an opportunity for you as an individual contributor to plan a community-connected project. Maybe you can take a step like Team 901 and build a team-taught project that's in an integrated block. Or if you're a teacher leader, a school leader, adopt a school-wide theme of community or water energy that could drive as Emily talked about, the aligned effort of many different teams taking on projects. And then finally, I think the global goals are a great way, the UN Sustainable Development Goals are a great way to both introduce young people to the world, but also invite them to craft projects around things that matter. Here's where you can find me on the web and on Twitter. And part of my place-based study is trying to take a picture of something we're sharing every day. So you can find me on Instagram, where I try to share what is now a monotonous series of pictures of Poverty Bay. Anyway, thanks for joining on A Power of Place, and look forward to our dialogue.